Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Danielle Fisher, and I'm the event manager here at Eco Canada. And today's session is called Building a Sustainable Future, Workforce Development in Fisheries and Aquaculture. Before we start, I would like to take a moment to recognize the traditional Indigenous lands where Eco Canada's office is based in Calgary. At Eco Canada, we're committed to working towards respectful acknowledgement, collaboration, and reconciliation with Indigenous peoples across Canada. This starts with acknowledging our honor and privilege to live and work within the Treaty 7 territory. Today, we are presenting from the city of Calgary, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. We would also like to take this time to acknowledge traditional territories and oral practices of the Niitsitapi, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina and Goodstoney, which includes Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. We would also like to pay respect to the Indigenous knowledges held by the Mi'kmaq people and to the wisdom of their elders, past and present. Today, we are in the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. For countless millennia, the Mi'kmaq Nation has inhabited this land, serving as its past, present, and future stewards. We express our gratitude to them for their enduring care of this region. Before we start, there are a few housekeeping guidelines for today's session to ensure that everyone can enjoy and participate in our session effectively. All participants are muted, so please check your audio settings to ensure that you can hear us properly. If you're experiencing any technical issues, please use the question box and select Eco Canada, the organizer, and I will do all that I can to resolve the issue. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on demand to you within the next 24 hours. Everyone who registered for the webinar will receive an email to the link to the video. Any questions that you have about the presentation or today's topic can be submitted through the chat box or question box. We will have dedicated time during the presentation to answer any questions from the audience. Finally, we really want to know what you think about our webinars and how we can keep improving. You'll be sent a short survey after the webinar ends. Please let us know what you think or if you have any comments or suggestions about the webinar. Eco Canada's vision is to build the world's leading environmental workforce. Eco Canada seeks to help environmental workers succeed at each step of their career journey. To do this, Eco Canada has developed programs tailored to individuals at different stages of their career. For those looking to enter the environmental workforce, Eco Canada provides training through the BEAR program and accreditation for environmental programs at post-secondary institutions. Eco Canada also provides opportunities for new workers to break into the environmental sector through wage funding for co-op students and recent post-secondary graduates. For those already employed as environmental workers, Eco Canada provides the environmental professional and environmental professional in training certifications and EPT students. Lastly, Eco Canada provides opportunities for those with vast experience as environmental workers to provide guidance and direction to Eco Canada's products and programs through advisory committees and emeritus memberships. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Joining us is Lisa Fitzgerald. Lisa has been a liaison between the fishing industry and government for over 27 years. As the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Fisheries Sector Council, she has worked on a number of training development initiatives related to quality handling, human resources, and safety. She has managed a number of working groups focused on attraction and retention of labor in the industry and has been a leader in safety by forming a safety association in Nova Scotia. She was also co-lead for Fishing Safety Now and is a long-standing member of the OHS Advisory Committee. Next, we'll hear from Chelsea Karbowski. Chelsea is the director of the ITSD Hub and joined the Hub with more than a decade of experience in the marine conservation, fisheries, and ocean sectors, where she developed expertise in fisheries management, fisheries policy, stakeholder engagement, and project management, all of which have been firmly grounded in Indigenous rights, values, perspectives, and realities. Chelsea remains grounded in the concept of two-eyed seeing, which is learning to see from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledge and ways of knowing, and seeing from the other eye with the strengths of Western knowledge and ways of knowing, which is a quote from Elder Albert Marshall. Over to you, ladies.
Thank you for the introduction, and my apologies for having to have my camera off. I have some poor internet connection today, so I do apologize for that, and I'm hoping that the strength will stay long enough for me to run through my slides. So thank you for the opportunity to provide some information around the Nova Scotia Fisheries Sector Council and how we look at building a sustainable future through workforce development. And in Nova Scotia, we're quite happy to do that work on behalf of the fishing industry. So next slide. So who we are, the Sector Council has been in operation since 1991. We are an HR council for fish harvesting, seafood processing, and aquaculture. So we have all three sectors that are involved in our council. Our focus is primarily on human resource planning. We also look at attraction and retention, and also training and capacity building for the industry. Our organization is funded by the Nova Scotia Department of Labour, Skills and Immigration. We have a sector council program funding, and there are 14 sector councils in Nova Scotia. So in order to further the objectives of our council is to enhance the existing workforce. We want to be able to attract new entrants for aquaculture, fish harvesting, fish processing, and look at careers by introducing the seafood industry as a viable and attractive long-term career option. Next slide. We are very much outcome-based. We do a lot of different projects that focus on looking at improving capacity. So working with fish harvesters, or even in the processing sector, aquaculture sector, to help them to bring them up to a level that will address their HR needs. Also provide better HR planning support. So a lot of times we work with small to medium-sized businesses that don't have the ability to have an HR person on staff. So we do provide those resources and be able to give them direction, guidance, and tools and things like that in order to help them with their HR pieces. Also looking at improving the methods of attraction and retention. So we are in a world now where it is very difficult to secure people into resource-based industries. So we're always looking at different ways of how employers can modernize their practices and be able to help them on that side of things. But then also look at increasing training opportunities. So as time goes on, we continue to find different types of training that are useful to the sector. So we try to either develop or help to promote some of those programs that are of use to the industry. Next slide. So looking at tools and supports to improve workforce development, I'm going to talk about 4 different things today. One is around Team Seafood. The other one is around fishjobs.ca, the Fish Harvesters Registration Certification Program, and training development. Next slide. So under training development, I'm not sure how that happened. We're like, the slide is not, this slide was supposed to be last. I'm not sure what the mix-up is there. Yep, okay. We'll roll with it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Yep. The Team Seafood one. Okay. All right. So this is Team Seafood, which is a youth bursary program. Next slide. So the concept was actually introduced to us. It was in PEI, and it was to help fill some labor gaps in the seafood processing sector and also agriculture as well. we worked with the provincial government in Nova Scotia to adopt the program in 2019. And the Sector Council was able to administer a pilot, which was quite successful. Next slide. So Nova Scotia companies were facing labor gaps during some of their peak periods of operation. Many youth in Nova Scotia are not exposed to the types of careers that the fishing industry can provide. And there is a desire to have a program that helps advance and address labor challenges, but also to provide an opportunity to promote careers. Next slide. Support for the program. So the funding is provided through the province of Nova Scotia through the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture, and also Labor, Skills and Immigration for the pilot program. So the funding was provided by the Nova Scotia Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture. So we first started with a 1-year agreement. Now we are in the second year of a 2-year agreement. Next slide. So how it works is that if an employer wants to participate, they are to apply to the Sector Council and be approved as a recognized employer. This can be also a marketing tool for them as they are in support of the program. They can use that when they're trying to recruit students to their operation. Students either in high school or post-secondary can apply for positions at these companies. And besides receiving a competitive wage, they have 12 months to complete either 500 or 250 hours at their place of employment. And a bursary will be awarded once they reach the required hours. So they get $1,500 if they work 500 hours, $750 for 250 hours. And the bursaries can be prorated if they're unable to reach their goals. So there are times when maybe an operation may not have been able to offer them the full amount of hours, but at least they get a portion of the hours that they have worked. So next slide. So when it comes to the process, students are to show that they're in school or that they'll be returning to school. Once the hours are completed, the employer is to show proof of hours and the bursary payment. So the employer actually pays the bursary payment to the student, and then payment is made to the employer by the Sector Council, 75% of the bursary, and 25% of it is covered by the employer. So there is an employer contribution towards it. Next slide. So there has been some growth in the program to include all of the sectors, so fish harvesting, seafood processing, and aquaculture. So as you can see, there has been a progression of students. So from 2020, we had 80 students. 2022, we had 106, and last year we had 153. So far in 2024, we have 71 employers who have signed on, and we have 215 students that have applied for bursaries. Next slide. So for us, some of the lessons that we have learned is it's really important to promote with the students in the schools. And we did spend some time with working with some students to actually help create some promotional tools, so that they were things that would actually speak to the students and what would motivate them to come work in the industry. We also expanded our time frame for qualifying, so 15 months either before or after in school, as we know that there is intakes for schools now, especially with post-secondary, aren't always as traditional as what they used to be, where you start school in September. Sometimes programs could start in January, they could start in April or whatever. So we wanted to have some flexibility for the students, and also having employer buy-in to the program. So making sure that there was a contribution by the employer to help support the program, and it actually allowed us to be able to help support more students that way. Next slide. So now we're going to look at tools and supports. So one of the when we look at current sources of our labor supply in Nova Scotia, there are a number of pieces that that we do try to draw upon in order to help to fill labor gaps inside of the various sectors. We have done some work around the Atlantic Immigration Program. We're helping to support the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. We do connect with Nova Scotia Works, which is offices around the province that do connect with potential employees. We also help support welcoming workplaces, so how we can help employers to do some onboarding with new entrants, and we also have fishjobs.ca. Next slide. So one of the things that we do have, our fishjobs.ca is a site to promote jobs in the industry. So we do work with employers to be able to post any kind of job vacancies that they may have. We do post those, quite frequently if employers are looking for workers. So it is kind of a hub of a spot where if you're looking to work in the sector, it's a place that you can go and look and see what the potential is. We also work with ESDC when it comes to the labor job bank. So if there are any positions that are listed on the job banks from our sectors, those feeds come directly into our site. So that way we have a more wholesome site with different types of job opportunities in the sector. Next slide. This is as an initiative that we did do to promote the sector. This is one of the processing facilities up in just around the Northumberland shore, where we had some quotes that were given to us from existing workforce as to why it's important to work in the sector and what their feelings were about the sector. So we did do a couple of different locations with the signs and actually use this as promotion to come work into the industry. So these workers here were from the seafood processing sector. Next slide. Also looking at retention opportunities, we ensure that we look at ways of how we can recognize long-standing employees, and also develop some criteria and and present to employees with something to acknowledge their time in the industry and within the company. Next slide. Fish Harvesters Registration and Certification Board. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Next slide. So just a little bit of a background. The program was designed for industry and is managed by industry. It took us about 30 years to actually launch the program. It gives us an opportunity to recognize the experience fish harvesters as professional based on their experience and their training, and to recognize fishing as an occupation in Nova Scotia. Next slide. So what does this program do? The first thing is they register commercial fish harvesters in the province of Nova Scotia. We also certify fish harvesters at one of 3 levels, so based on their past experience and their training received, and then also administer a training system that will help build capacity and knowledge in the industry. So the main activities is around registration, certification, and training. Next slide. So the registration system was launched on October 13th, 2021. So we've had 3 years of operation so far. In our first year in 2021, which is only a partial year, we had 617 register, 1362 in 22, and 1467 in 23. So so far this year, right in August, we had 1,245. As the program has started launch, we've had almost 4,600 people that have registered with the Fish Harvesters Board. There is a requirement in Nova Scotia and actually in all provinces that if you fish commercially, you are required to have a personal fishing registration. In Nova Scotia, people have an option either to register with the industry board or they can register with DFO. When they register with the board, those funds are actually invested back into industry, which does create some value. So if you're going to have to pay your $50, a lot of times it's more valuable for you to register with the board as opposed to registering with DFO. In 2025, our registration opened on August 1st. So we do allow for a bit of time for people to get their 2025 registration. Next slide. Next slide. When it comes to certifications, so we have certificates haven't been identified on and there will be that are registered, which will identify the training and communication to be executed and behind it. The other thing.
My apologies, everyone. I think that we're losing Lisa here. We'll just give her a few moments to see if she can get back on. Okay, I think we're just going to have to move forward to your presentation, Chelsea. I think we've lost Lisa, so I'm just going to move the slides forward. Thank you.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. So I just wanted to first introduce myself. I know she gave a brief introduction at the start, but my name is Chelsea Karbowski. I am mixed ancestry and am a member of Indian Head First Nation. I am joining you today, and I do want to thank Eco Canada for their land acknowledgement, but for myself, I'm joining you today from the unceded territory of my ancestors, the Mi'kmaq. And before I start, I do just want to give thanks to all those who have come before me and whose wisdom and knowledge really does guide us every day. So for that, I just want to say thank you and express thanks to everyone who's joining. You can go to the next slide. The presentation flow for the day is going to look at introducing my host organization, as well as where the hub itself came from. Going to look at some of the opportunities for Indigenous training and skills development across Turtle Island, as well as give an overview of what we're working on and what the future of training and skill development looks like within this space. Next slide. The National Indigenous Fisheries Institute is our host organization and is promoting national consistency and standards across Indigenous programs and practices to maximize the benefits to communities. The organization is rooted in the principles of collaboration between Indigenous groups and government, the co-development, co-design, and co-delivery approach to improving the programs and practices that impact the lives of Indigenous people and communities. Work began with the Indigenous Program Review and the development of the Northern Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative. This was completed in May of 2019, and it was formally accepted by Fisheries and Oceans Canada at the same time. In September of 2019, the department also released a publicly accessible action plan to respond to each of the recommendations put forth in the review. The Institute currently has a number of projects underway to support Indigenous program review implementation and the delivery of Fisheries and Oceans Canada's action plan. A quote from John G. Paul, who is the Executive Director of the Atlantic Policy Congress of First Nation Chiefs Secretariat, as well as the President of NIFI, that is the shorthand. Indigenous program review has been a rewarding experience. We appreciate the efforts of program participants and community leaders to inform this review and to guide our recommendations for improvements. We also value the collaborative relationship that has further developed with Fisheries and Oceans Canada through the review and their commitment to implement the changes necessary to ensure Indigenous communities and groups across Canada, as well as fish and aquatic resources, benefit from these programs. So to dig in a little more into Indigenous programs, what Indigenous Programs Review was and is today, in May 2017, as well as May of 2019, the Institute conducted a technical examination of the function and evolution of each Fisheries and Oceans Canada DFO programs, which support Indigenous involvement in commercial fishing and aquaculture operations and the collaborative management of fisheries, aquatic resources, oceans, and habitat. 5 programs were reviewed: the Aboriginal Fishery Strategy, the Aboriginal Fishery Guardian Program, the Aboriginal Aquatic Resource and Ocean Management Program, Atlantic Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiatives, and Pacific Integrated Commercial Fisheries Initiative. The review included a desktop research of evaluations, audits, proposals, and practices internal to the department. It also included discussion papers, face-to-face workshops and engagement sessions, as well as open channels of communications to allow for feedback. And this leads me to my role today, which is the director of the ITSD Hub. So how we started. During the IPR review in 2019, one of the recommendations, or several recommendations actually, highlighted that the department needed to secure long-term sources of funding to augment training and skills development activities that its programs cannot fully support. In 2022, the Hub, which is housed within NIFI, was created as a 3-year pilot project to respond to training needs and is a part of a larger ITSD initiative that was being led by the Strategic Partnership Initiative, which looks at supporting training coordination, targeted training, skill inventory and development, capacity readiness support, and curriculum development. At the Hub, we aspire to be a resource hub for all Indigenous communities when it comes to ITSD within the Fisheries and Oceans space. Our mission is to collaborate with partners to deliver training and skill development resources in fisheries and oceans related fields. We aim to strengthen the capacity of Indigenous communities and advance their efforts in sustainable fisheries. Our ultimate goal is to support Indigenous communities across Canada in their capacity development efforts within the fisheries and oceans sector, while advancing economic reconciliation and supporting a brighter future for the next 7 generations. The Hub works with all Indigenous fisheries programs, which today includes commercial and collaborative, and they're listed here. We also strive to work with Indigenous communities and organizations who are not funded by DFO programs, as well as outside partners from provincial and federal government departments and agencies, non-governmental organizations, academic institutions, private industry, and more. We work collaboratively with our partners, who act as a bridge between the ITSD hub and Indigenous communities across Turtle Island. Our partners meet with communities to identify training and skills development needs and priorities, and the hub works in the background to develop and deliver resources, which might include inventories of service providers, which can be accessed in a database, templates for mentorships, course materials, those types of things, which help support this work. And as partners are such a big part of how we work, I want to give some background on the different partners. So we work with the business development teams. Across Canada, there are 4 business development teams, which vary in size from 2 staff to 8+. The BDTs provide advisory services to Indigenous commercial fishing enterprises, referred to as CFEs, across Canada, and foster First Nations economic growth through diverse aquatic and coastal industries. There are 4 shown here. I'm not going to list all the details for each, but you will have access to it. But there is PICFI, NICFI Central, NICFI North, and AICFI, NICFI South. In addition, we have collaborative programs partners, which is the capacity development team. Their work is through structured organizational and technical capacity development activities and coordination of skill development and training opportunities. The focus of the CDT is to support and develop the capacity of Indigenous communities and organizations participating in aquatic and fisheries management in Atlantic Canada, coastal Quebec, the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. Through their qualified team of professionals, the CDT will work to identify, plan, and implement the organizational and technical capabilities needed now and into the future. And this is just a list of the services offered by the CDT. However, if you'd like to learn more about them specifically, you can go to their website or reach out to the lead, which is Clayton Copaway. Additional partners can include Indigenous communities and organizations, as I said, who are not funded by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans collaborative programs. Some communities have either chosen not to be a part of the DFO commercial and collaborative programs or did not have the option to participate, with a variety of reasons contributing to this. For those communities and organizations, we strive to be an inclusive space for everyone to connect on Indigenous training and skills development within the fisheries and oceans sector. Our goal is to be a resource hub for all Indigenous communities and organizations, whether they are represented by DFO programs or not. And I think just as we're continuing on, our goal is to be a resource hub for all. However, we are not a funding agency, and the work we do is only made possible in partnership with in collaboration with our partners. Why is the work important? We want to see a future where Indigenous people and communities have fair and equitable access and opportunities in the fisheries and oceans sector. By offering training that aligns with Indigenous values and realities, we can meaningfully build capacity, grow training and employment opportunities, and strengthen succession planning for generations to come. The hub is needed as there's currently a lack of connection across the various partners within the ITSD in fisheries and oceans. And the hub can act as just that, the idea, a hub for the various parties working to make connections and cultivating a robust network, while also providing community-based training and resources that integrates Indigenous values and realities. I think it's important to give a snapshot of Indigenous fisheries across Turtle Island. Our fisheries are diverse from coast to coast to coast, and fisheries have remained a key part of the lives of Indigenous people since time immemorial. Some interesting stats are there are 18% of core harbors located within 10 kilometers of a First Nations reserve, and 31% within close proximity to Indigenous communities. As of 2019, Indigenous fisheries in Canada employ more than 5,000 people. Indigenous fisheries generate over $260 million annual revenues. For many communities, fisheries are the main contributor of own source revenue and job creation. And overall, those employed in the fishing industry who have Aboriginal identity account for 16% of all Canadians employed in the fishing industry. So when we look at opportunities in the fisheries and ocean sector, we have to, or we should point to labor shortages and Indigenous growth. The Canadian population is aging quickly, putting downward pressure on labor force participation and ultimately on economic growth. The Indigenous population, however, is relatively useful and fast growing, which could help to offset some of the impacts of an aging national population, especially if participation rates were to rise to levels of the rest of the population. A recent study conducted by Inspire, updated in 2023, found that in the future, Indigenous people will contribute significantly to the national labor force, and the Indigenous labor force growth is projected at 10% based on a medium growth population projection and with current participation rates. More than 15% is projected in provinces and regions where the non-Indigenous labor force growth is low. There is also greater Indigenous population per capita in those areas, might attribute to the higher percentage. And if the gap in the labor force participation rate is closed, that would also increase the percentage as well. The Indigenous share of labor force growth ranges from 6 to 15%, as I mentioned, with a constant participation rate gap. And if that closes, from 10 to 19%. Closing the gap would increase the contribution by about 4 to 5 percentage points at least in every scenario in reality. And in all three scenarios, Indigenous people are a significant contributor to the labor force. And again, closing that gap would only provide an additional impact. In many provinces and regions, the proportion is much higher. In Manitoba, it's 17%, and in Saskatchewan, it's 27%. If we look at Quebec, that's 22%, and Atlantic Canada, it's 20%. So Indigenous people will account for all of the labor force growth, more in Atlantic Canada specifically, more than offsetting the decline of the non-Indigenous labor force. The importance of the fishing industry for many communities across Canada, especially for Indigenous communities, cannot properly be quantified by the number of jobs alone. These jobs not only provide a key source of income for workers, they also contribute to economic and social development of many rural and remote communities. As I mentioned, for Atlantic Canada, there's a unique example, as well as in the north. They're slightly more complicated than the rest, but for the Atlantic, the overall labor force is set to decline rather than grow. And that's due to a decline in the non-Indigenous labor force. The growing Indigenous labor force, however, offsets the decline by 20%, and that reduces the contraction from 8% to 6%. For the north, again, a unique scenario, there's a similar situation. However, for the north, the non-Indigenous labor force is still set to decline. However, the growing Indigenous labor force offsets the decline as well as adds additional growth of 4%. So they're not only making up for the decline, but growing on top of that. And to give some specific reference to aquaculture, as that is a unique sector, the predicted growth in global demand for aquaculture products will drive the need for additional workers to increase output and meet market demand. However, the number of people available to work in the industry is not predicted to keep pace with the need for workers. Aquaculture labor issues are predicted to worsen over the next decade, and the demand for workers within the industry is expected to rise by an average of 1.4% per year from now until 2029. So in 2029, there's some estimates in which 600 fewer domestic workers will be available. 36% of the workforce is going to be lost to retirement, and there's going to be more than 470 jobs that the domestic workforce currently cannot fill. In addition, the Canadian economy will increasingly require a skilled and agile workforce from which all can benefit. And over the next 25 years, Indigenous people will take on a greater role in Canada's labour market, helping to address the challenges of an aging population and starting to meet the demands of increased workforce. With the right policies, the contribution could be even larger, benefiting Indigenous people, communities, and the Canadian economy as a whole. This highlights the importance of continuing and enhancing investments in education and training for Indigenous people and communities, providing opportunities that align with Indigenous values and culture, and this really allows both worlds to work together and prosper. So in light of all that, what is the hub working on? As we establish the ITSD hub, we hope to become just that, as I've mentioned, an interactive hub, a nexus for ITSD in the fisheries and oceans sector, and a key resource to our on-the-ground partners. Our goal is to make connections and cultivate a robust network to address training gaps as they are identified. Priorities for this include hosting an online portal for key resources, and having an interactive inventory of service providers, as well as other important elements such as course offerings, mentorship opportunities, stuff like that. The hub also hopes to establish our work collaboratively with partners to address the gaps in training and skills development within this sector. Priorities for this work include strengthened communication and collaboration with our partners, ensuring that we're working together effectively to support ITSD in the fisheries and oceans sector. Many of the lessons learned to date have reaffirmed the need for an Indigenous-led organization like the Hub that can support community-based training that respects Indigenous values and realities. The Hub and our team are well equipped to fill critical gaps such as these by developing key resources related to ITSD within this sector, developing and delivering on curriculum that is grounded in Indigenous perspectives, and by responding to training requests as they arise. Priorities for this work includes providing resources that are often outsourced by our partners. For example, communities might outsource training to third parties who are not Indigenous. The Hub would like to begin to alleviate the need for outsourcing this work. And supporting the establishment and growth of mentorships and internships is very important and a component across all of this work. The Hub hopes to prioritize the involvement of youth within this space by identifying opportunities and really making information readily available and making connections between people interested and opportunities that are out there. And sort of the last pillar of what we're working on is we hope to empower Indigenous people and communities where we are working to support a future in which Indigenous people and communities have fair and equitable opportunities, as I said previously, for training, employment, and leadership. And the goal is to do this through offering training services that align and really looking at key priorities to support this work, such as promoting Indigenous excellence and expertise within this space. There are many Indigenous people with experience and expertise within the fisheries and ocean sector, and there will be a growing number as training and skills development continues to advance. The Hub sees immense value in promoting these expertise and connecting people together. So how do we plan to move forward? We are currently in the fall of 2024, and it's going by a lot faster than I think anyone would like, but the plan is to have a strengthened identity of the Hub, to strengthen and expand our partnerships, increase our visibility and accessibility, support training requests from our partners, develop an internship mentorship program, toolkit to help support our partners and communities, publish a report on past work, as well as publish career profiles that will help to provide insight and just information as to what potential careers exist within this space and how you might advance within a career. For the winter, we hope to develop and publish some key toolkits and databases, which when I refer to a database, I'm talking about an inventory of, as I mentioned, service providers, training offerings, internship opportunities, educational opportunities, those types of things, so that all of the information is in one space and a lot more readily available and accessible to our partners and communities as a whole. And looking to a phase 2, as I said, the hub was a 3-year pilot project. We're hoping to move into a phase 2 for 2025. And for that, the hub really, we're looking to deliver accessible quality services that are grounded in Indigenous perspectives and realities. Our services promote growth of Indigenous people in the fisheries and oceans sector. We hope that we can act as an incubator for excellence and also start innovating and changing the status quo. The future of ITSD in the fisheries and oceans sector is one where, at least we hope, Indigenous communities are becoming more involved. Based on the labor study from Indispire, Indigenous people are going to contribute a significant amount to the labor force growth in the fisheries and oceans sector nationally. And again, closing that participation gap would only increase the level of this impact. We also look that the future is one where Indigenous people are being highlighted. So Indigenous people, as I said, have a tremendous amount of experience within the fisheries and oceans sector. And in recent years, there's actually been an increased awareness and acceptance towards the importance of bringing both Indigenous knowledge systems and Western knowledge systems together, a concept captured by the term two-eyed seeing, established by Elder Albert Marshall. And the hub hopes to embrace this concept by working collaboratively with partners, not only from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, commercial and collaborative programs, but also outside partners from provincial and federal government departments and agencies, NGOs, academia, etc. We also see the future of ITSD to be one where there's a strengthened collaboration and coordination across all of Turtle Island. So training and skills development needs will continue to evolve and change. The needs of each community will be, or community or nation will be unique. However, even though community needs may be unique or vary, there will likely be common themes for ITSD within the fisheries and oceans space. By identifying these themes, the hub sees that we can increase opportunities and collaboration within the ITSD space of fisheries and oceans, but also by having opportunities for collaboration and coordination of ITSD resources as a whole. So really bringing everything together and making it accessible and easy to use so that we are alleviating some of the challenge or work that communities are often requiring, but perhaps don't know where to start or could just use an extra hand when trying to address these things. If anyone has any questions or for more information, you can reach out to myself or Keisha Moffat. And I just want to again say, Ola Lioch, thank you, merci. And if anyone was perhaps stumped by the various acronyms throughout the presentation, you'll find an acronyms list at the end. I hope that does help you.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation, Chelsea and Lisa. Lisa, I hope you're still here. Are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Oh, you are. Okay, great. So I'm just going to ask some questions from our audience. So our first question, I think this is probably for Chelsea, and it is, are there programs that braid traditional Indigenous fishing knowledge with Western, or Indigenous fishing knowledge with Western fishing practices? Is there such a program? Oh, you're just muted.
Classic. Thanks for the question. I think, yes, there's definitely programs that exist. It also, I think, depends what you mean by program, whether that's an academic program, a training course. There's definitely opportunities out there, and that is something that we hope to highlight as our inventory becomes a live resource to people.
Wonderful. So another question here. How can Nova Scotia better integrate sustainability-focused training into existing educational pathways for fisheries and aquaculture?
One of the things that we have done in the past is look at different types of training around quality and like some of the handling practices and things like that, which does help to address some of the requirements under some of the programs, looking at ensuring that there is sustainable practices that are being used in some of the operations and things like that. So primarily, most of our training is focused on under an HR lens, but I know that there are different programs where different species are certified at particular levels. So, but we have been able to help support if there has been some training that has been required.
Amazing. Now, this is a question for both of you, and Chelsea in particular. How can more Indigenous youth be encouraged to pursue careers in fisheries and aquaculture? And what role does mentorship and apprenticeship programs play in this effort?
Thanks for the question. I'm a very strong proponent of mentorships, internships being the future of how we do things. I think historically that is how, at least for myself, that's how we've operated. And I think that's very similar across all of Turtle Island. I think we need to really look at having conversations a lot earlier, as well as providing information in a really accessible way. Often, even with this presentation, stuff's really text heavy, and creating materials that are perhaps more visual, tell a story. There's a lot of opportunity to create information that is perhaps oral or visual. And I think those are really important in order to allow people to see things differently. Also, to get information out that perhaps is a bit dense at times and instead make it, as I said, like relatable, accessible. Because even for myself, when I was young, I didn't know exactly what career I wanted or what was out there for me. And had I had resources like the ones the hub is working on getting out to the public, where it really lays out, if you want to be a fisheries guardian, here's what it looks like, and here's where you could start, or here's where you could go. Those pieces of information would have been so incredibly helpful. And I think getting those things out there to people, again, as early as possible, and having young people be a part of the conversation as stuff grows, I think that they go hand in hand, and we really need to just keep pushing that moving forward.
Almost like a grassroots movement where you're trying to capture them young and then bring them throughout the whole process and also have their input into the process. So that's really admirable. Okay. Here's another question. How are the workforce demands different between fisheries and aquaculture? Are there different skill gaps that impact fisheries workforce and that aren't gaps for aquaculture and vice versa?
One thing that we do see is when you look at demographics in the sectors, there is a difference between the more traditional fish harvesting in comparison to aquaculture. Aquaculture is I don't think we can really call it new anymore because it has been in Nova Scotia for the last 25, 30 years, but the workforce is a little bit younger than what you may see in aboard fishing vessels, where there is a range in some parts of the province where your average age is in the 50s or 60s. Although there is in some parts of the province some younger people that are getting into the industry. So a lot of it depends on how lucrative it is and what they can be doing to help encourage people. In seafood processing, the average age is a bit higher. So you do have some differences in when it comes to demographics and looking at how you're going to be able to place some of the workers. So that's why they looked at different programs like the temporary foreign worker and things like that when there are some busy times of the seasons, because a lot of it can be seasonal in nature. Because of the fact that it is harder to secure workers within those peak periods.
So is it more difficult to find new blood coming into the fishing industry to go onto the boats? Is it mostly an older demographic?
It really depends on economics, really is what it comes down to. There are parts of the province in Nova Scotia where students and some of the high schools struggle to keep their students in the classroom because they want to be out fishing. So it is difficult to get them through to grade 12, and they've actually even put in some programs where fishing is actually noted as a credit, so it goes back to outcomes. It could be in math, could be in science, because of the fact that people are, they're having a hard time keeping those youth in the classroom. The other part, so there are parts of the province where they have a shorter season. Maybe their season is only 2 months, and it's harder for them to find people to come and work in the sector because it's only offering a limited amount of employment for those youth. So there is a bit of a difference, when it comes to people coming into the sector and what the age ranges are. So, but a lot of it is driven by economics. I would say is probably the easiest way to determine it.
Yeah, I bet. Some specific regional economic barriers and issues that you might have there. For Chelsea, what are the most pressing barriers that Indigenous individuals face when entering or advancing in the fisheries and aquaculture workforce? What are we seeing today?
Yeah, that's a very big question. I think there's a lot of barriers. Honestly, it's tough to even begin to list them, but definitely accessibility. A lot of people don't want to necessarily leave community, and often jobs are outside, or you might need to relocate, and that really is a barrier for sure. I think there's also some historic lack of involvement that has been going on, and so there's a barrier when it comes to integrating into vessels, but there's definitely work being done on that as well. I think there's also some barriers in terms of getting access to opportunities. As I said, it would be an ideal scenario if we can start to be engaging with youth who are interested in entering fisheries and ocean space, to really figure out if it's something that they want to pursue. And often those sort of mentorship opportunities aren't as easily accessible or might not be as often to come by. And it would be really great to start to see some of those opportunities increase and see more involvement. I think those are a few, but that is a tough question, and I think perhaps a bigger conversation.
Maybe a whole new webinar on just the barriers that we might be facing. Okay, so we have time for one last question. Are there any innovative technologies or methods being adopted by Nova Scotia's fisheries that are influencing the type of skills needed for the workforce? Is there AI out there? Is there anything that's really new and notable that we need to hear about?
Yeah, I can maybe just, oh, I'll let you go first, Lisa.
No, go ahead, Chelsea.
I maybe just speak to, there's been a growing conversation around green energy, so apply that to the ocean, often referred to as the blue economy. But really looking at decarbonizing fisheries and ocean sector, whether that is by electrifying vessels or using, as you said, AI is becoming more prominent. So I think there's definitely an increased interest, and a lot of communities are interested in, what is it? What does it mean? And then what are the opportunities to look at within that? So yeah, electrifying vessels, that's one option, but there's also, you could look at using solar production to offset your processing power requirements, or really the list can go on and on. You can use aquaponics at the same time that you're using land-based aquaculture facility. Those types of things all are becoming really interesting, and I think people are looking to increasingly become more sustainable and energy efficient. So it's really cool to start to see those conversations happening.
Yeah, there's some neat stuff out there. Lisa?
I was just going to say that there is a funding program, the Atlantic Fisheries Fund, that a number of commercial fish harvesters have taken advantage of, that have helped them to incorporate new equipment aboard their vessels. And these are new technologies, looking at things like sounder equipment for locating fish when they're conducting surveys, looking at things that, to help store product aboard, so those are important pieces that, new technologies that they've been able to access. The other piece, I know for us, through the safety lens, is that we have developed a safety app that fish harvesters can use, where they can actually document some of their safety practices that they're doing, which does help for them to comply to some of the Transport Canada requirements when it comes to developing safety procedures, conducting safety drills, things like that. So this is, we do have, resources, paper-based resources for documentation, but we also went to the extent of creating an app that people can use on their phone or a tablet or something like that, just to get them more familiar with, with technology-based products, and making things a little bit easier for them for documentation.
Sounds really interesting. That brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. Do you have any last words before we end?
Just thank you again for having myself, and I think I heard Lisa trying to chime in to say thank you too.
Yes, exactly what Chelsea said. and actually, it's good to meet Chelsea, because I think there's a lot of things that they are doing, that we are doing, that we could be partnering on in the future. So thanks for the opportunity to be able to make that connection in Nova Scotia.
I love to hear it. Thank you both. It was a wonderful presentation, a lot of really interesting and things to look forward to in the future. So Thank you all. This recording will be made available to you within the next 24 hours if you register for our webinar. I just wanted to say a great heartfelt thank you to the Future Skills Centre for putting this webinar on with the help of Eco Canada. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you out there in the water. Bye.
Okay. Thank you.